Hello, again. Still working on that intro. Hi, I'm Jerzy Drozd, cartoonist and teaching artist. The links about me are right above you. Right above you? They're right above you. They're right above me. I'm you. Oh no. We're in some kind of weird Twilight Zone situation. And what am I doing today? So we're going to see if I reinstalled my NDI plugins to see if I don't have any problems with my overhead camera or when I want to draw in Clip Studio Paint. So, yeah, what are we doing? If you look at this, this is another study that I'm doing, Baron von Baer, like environmental drawing, like just trying to draw a little bit of the world and the characters interacting in it. And this was penciled in Clip Studio Paint and printed out onto watercolor paper and inked with brush pens. And I think microns were used in here a little bit. So I then scanned this and I imported it into Clip Studio Paint again and used Ray Frenden's watercolor brushes to paint it. Now, what I did differently this time is I actually made a 12-pan palette out of these paints. I painted a 12-pan palette on a piece of watercolor paper, scanned it into Clip Studio Paint, and used that as my palette. So now I'm going to do the same thing where I'm going to use the same palette to paint on paper and see, one, how long it takes, and two, how easy it is, and three, like, am I happy with the results? Do I like the way it looks? Which one do I like better? Trying to figure out if I prefer working with analog watercolor or digital watercolor. Obviously, they're going to have different advantages and disadvantages, right? For instance, I have a lot more flexibility with regard to layers and editing in Clip Studio Paint. I can really get precise about my fills. Like right here, like it's hard for me to see exactly where the brush is going as I wet this down. So that's going to be a disadvantage, is I'm going to be a little less precise. But, you know, it's not wrong of me to invoke the name of Bob Ross on a stream where I'm drawing, is it? It's not like a Beetlejuice or an Inception thing if I do that. I don't know why watch is buzzing at me. Okay, no big deal. Anyway, you know, I think it was Bob Ross who talked about happy accidents, right? And there's a truth to that. I have had situations where when I'm making drawings and like an error will happen, I'll be like, oh, I didn't mean to do that, but I'm glad I did. So, and also, I think as I've been expressing in some of my other live streams, part of the rationale behind this exploration is I'm trying to like really get more efficient in the way I make my art. And one of the things I constantly catch myself doing is overworking a drawing when I'm working digitally. I get too hung up on come on, you can do this. I get too hung up on things and I like spend too much time on the illustration trying to make it just so. And when I work this way on paper, I find myself forgiving myself more often and being like, it's fine. That's good enough. Some language I've been using on the Lean Tartcast. I think Rob actually coined this. It's like being on the good enough train. All right, so sky is essentially done. Now, I printed this out in non-photo blue, or rather in cyan ink, so I could easily remove the pencils when I took it in and scanned it. But now we got in a situation where that blue is going to mix with whatever color I put there. So guess what? These trees are going to have a bluish, greenish hue. Work with what you got. see what I'm mixing here. More yellow, please. A little bit of dark green. More yellow. Get really light green here. Get a lot of paint because I'm going to be doing a lot of trees for a little bit. Okay. This is also something that I just never would have thought of seeing myself doing like 4 or 5 years ago, is painting with such a big brush. Whenever I would see artists using like palette knives or whatever, like these just pieces of metal to like paint with oil paints, just it looked like a magic trick to me. This is nowhere near the same thing, but I feel like this is daring for me. When I was first starting out as an artist, I was the kid who wanted the finest point pen. Can you get like 0.1? That's the only way you can do it right. Oh, hey, Steven. Good to see you. Yeah, we've been talking about this very piece in the Lean Into Art Discord, haven't we? Yeah, so the next, this I'm going to do a side-by-side in terms of like how the colors shake out, like how I feel about the texture and color. And also, I'm really looking at how's the speed going. Because, as I said in the Lean Into Art Discord, the digital painting, I need a 0.005 micron. The digital painting is there, and that took me about 2 hours, not including flatting. So, like flatting, I forget how long the flatting took. It didn't take that long. But the actual I did flat it because I used the selection tool to grab all the shapes. That's right. But I painted on a transparent canvas. Like I didn't paint over top of fills. Anyway, that took 2 hours to do. So now what I'm trying to figure out here is, well, is this going to take more or less time? Time to break out the small brush. Because that's an important metric. As I'm thinking about projects going forward, I'm in the process of redesigning a bunch of the Amazon Academy characters, which is what I was doing on Monday's stream. And I'm thinking about, well, if we do this project, whether we do it as a webcomic again or if we try to seek out a publisher, the cold hard fact is there's just not a lot of money in new comics unless I build like a huge audience around it. That's a whole other thing. So I got to be ruthlessly efficient about the time I spend on it, so I'm not working for $4 an hour. That's not too bad. I was really worried that blue was going to super gunk up the color, but that actually doesn't look that bad. Huh. That is very interesting. I guess I printed it just light enough? I don't know. Because that was actually another point for doing digital coloring is the fact that I could remove the blue, so I don't have to worry about it showing up in the final art. But my goodness, if it looks like this, let's do some of these smaller trees. When I first started doing watercolor, I feel like I've been on this journey to like just mellowing the heck out about my art. And because like when I was first doing my watercolor class several years back now, I remember being really kind of wound up on the fact that like, but how am I going to make sure that my colors are consistent? You know, like you can see how this green is a brighter green than this tree. I'm like, well, you know what? Colors are not perfectly consistent in real life, dear Jerzy. And obviously, there's gonna be times where you do want the colors to be like way more consistent, but it's fun to just find like kind of let it go, let that fall away. I feel like I need to send a message to Ben Hatke, who told me at an A2 CAF years ago, you know, like working at the watercolor's pace. In other words, like trying to work with it before it dries too much or waiting for it to dry so that you can do something else. And then also like sort of discovering what the watercolor wants to do was part of the adventure and fun of working in watercolor. And I remember at the time, this is like 4 or 5 years ago, I was like, across my arms, like, no. I need to send him a message and tell him I understand now. Thank you for giving me that little piece of wisdom to hold on to as I was navigating this. And also, Richie Pope posted on Twitter yesterday this great quote from Linda Berry. What is his account name? I just had it up because he is at Richie Pope. Easy enough to find. And there's this quote about how throwing the lines down on the paper is not just you describing an object. The lines communicate back to you, and you're discovering what it is in the act of throwing down the lines. And that's just such a, I'm paraphrasing very poorly, because Linda Berry is a national treasure, and she is a much better speaker than I am. But the idea there is something I've been sort of exploring in my classrooms with my students, is like this whole idea of getting out of your own way and just start throwing lines down, because the act of doing it will reveal what it needs to be, which sounds all, you know, woo-woo and metaphysical and, you know, using the force and whatnot. And I don't mean it to sound that way, but I do feel like this is one of the reasons why we don't draw our covers until the story's done, because how can you draw an image to promote or to tease a story when you don't even know what it is yet, because you don't really find out until you do it. This is something Dan Michigan told me when I was first becoming friends with him, is that the act of making the story reveals what the story is. And I feel like it's the same thing with drawings. So I feel like watercolor has given me a, I don't know, a more visceral sort of understanding of that, or maybe just like another way of understanding it. Maybe that's all I'm saying. All right, I'm going to take some green. I'm going to mix it in with this brown over here. Let's get a browner green for some of these background trees. I'm already predicting that when I compare this to the digital one, I'm going to be happier with the variation in color of the trees. Because one thing that's way easier about doing it this way is having the palette right darn here, and be able to mix right here. Like what I was having to do in Clip is create a separate document for mixing colors when I wanted to mix. So I had to keep like switching tabs. That looks good. Uh-oh. We have a problem. We need some more opaque. I put in the colors too opaque there. So now when I try to brush in some shading, it's removing the color that was there, leaving like this weird lightness. I guess I can do this. Yeah, see? Oh, phooey. Not insurmountable. We can fix this. But I will have to come back to you, tree. Okay. But I can get down here. How long have I been going? 18 minutes. And this is how far I've gotten. I don't know how that shakes out in terms of... this is. I just felt the instinct to control S. We've all been there. All right. Let's get a little more of that greenish brown going on over here. My big brush. A bit of you. There we go. I suppose, yes, it is better to have the instinct to control S than control Z, because control Z means whoops. Control Z says, I wish I didn't do that. Leave you be. And what do you think? Think I need to add a little bit of blue back there? I'm going to put a tiniest bit of blue in this. Okay. Do I need my smaller brush now? I can't tell. Things are getting speedier now. I'm getting more comfortable. Have you noticed that when you're doing your art? Like there's that like almost stammering, hiccuping feeling at the beginning. Then all of a sudden, like you start to feel like, okay, I think I know what I'm doing now. Okay. Mixing in some purple. There we go. I don't even know if that's showing up. Is that even visible on camera? Like that little tiny bit of shading that I did on there? I'm really happy with it. Now, if I were to do a future book like this, I would have to talk with Ben too about like, gosh, how do you handle scanning? Tell me that you outsource it. Tell me you get you hire somebody out to take care of that because I hate scanning as it is. Much less trying to like get really good color. What would you call it? Color fidelity. The truth is, I'm just too darn impatient when it comes to that part. That's where I need to practice a little bit better, a little bit more. All right, big brush again for mixing. Just turning the paper because I don't want to get my hand messing up any paints that are drying over there. Any trees missing? Oh, yeah, there's a mess of you guys down here. Okay. Time to get more brown. More green. Let's see. We'll do you the same color, roughly. Let's get you a little greener. Now I'm going to break out a little brush. Right. I think I might have the same problem here that I had before, where I put down the color with too much opacity, or yeah, it's too opaque. Too much paint was in that first pass, so now when I try to put shading on, I'm pulling up the paint that was there. See that? That is a bummer. So, and boom, look at that. Now it's all gone. Oh, I have to try to match this. Or make a really dark shade. Let's see if I can do that. Leave that be for a little bit. That would have been a Control-Z moment. I don't have that luxury, though. All right, we got a few more trees to go through, and then I'm going to move on to maybe some of this architecture stuff. We get a blue or green going. Did I miss anybody? There's that guy there. I'm going to get some shading in there. Okay. And blue one more time. Let's see. What do I want to do next? Do I want to do the trees, or do I want to do the buildings? I'm going to do the buildings. Let's do the buildings. And I'm going to break into my blue palette for this, because if we remember, that was the color scheme I went with. It's like bluish rock, and then like these fallen rocks, trying to make it look like it was, you know, ancient city. There's been a lot of overgrowth. There's even been like some geological changes since this civilization existed, try to give it a sense of like extra ancientness. I'm trying to imply that through the colors that I use too. These rocks do not belong with these rocks. These rocks were either brought in from someplace else, or the what would you say, like the geography was different. Is it cartoony? Yes, it's a cartoon. Cartoon in the sense that it's a cartoon drawing. Oh, I missed a tree. Now we'll go to our blue palette. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually clean out a spot to make way for my blue palette. Normally I would just like go over to the sink and wash this, but what do you want me to do? You want me to leave you alone here? Just staring at this drawing? That'd be rude. All right. You're up, Blue. I hope I'm not going Picasso on y'all. We're going to get some more colors in here presently. Okay. What I'm going to start with, a little tiny bit of yellow. That's too dark. Get you out of there. I want a brighter yellow. I want it to be a paler yellow too. And now we'll get that blue in there. Just a tiny bit of indigo in there. Just a dab. There we go. Okay. I'm not going to make the same mistake I made earlier with this tree, and I'm going to come in with some very light watery paint. I'm not going to come in with like too much paint on the brush. As you can see, like that's unfortunate what's happening right there with that, like how that color is washed out in the shading, because I put in too much paint and then lifted it off when I was putting in the shading. Whoops, whoops, whoops. Tom. Tom, you speak for the people. All right. Well, that dries. I'll do this building in the distance back here. How long have I been going? 41 minutes. There is no way I'm doing this in an hour. No way. And that's not to be defeatist. That's accepting the way things are going. And like I said, the digital version that I did, that was 2 hours of work. So To be this far along in 41 minutes, I'm going to be happy with that. All right, a little more definition on this ruined statue. Looks okay. And then it's always time to break out the purple. Starting to a little bit more definition in there. That's bugging me. I want to try to fix that. And what leaves are those patterned after on the right-hand side? Looks like we got some droopy leaves there for sure. So we've got some ferns. So these rocks were actually from photo reference from a park here in Ohio. Was it Black Hand Gorge? I went to a while back, and there's just all these cool like rocks all crisscrossing and all these weird angles, and then there's just these trees just growing out of them and plants just like coming out of all the crevices. It's just it was like being on an alien planet almost. It was really cool. So I took a ton of pictures knowing that I was going to use those for some settings in one of my books. And I thought, well, if I'm going to be doing some environment studies for learning what kind of tools I want to use for one of my next projects, why not break out some of those images for reference. Okay. Let's get Oh, Tom, you've been to Black Hand Gorge. That's awesome. Yeah, I've been saying this a lot ever since moving to Columbus. Um, as a Michigander by birth, um, I always thought my only like interaction with Ohio was always driving through it to get someplace else. I never did anything in Ohio. I'm going to Kentucky. We'll drive through Ohio. And so I only knew it from the freeways and like just the farmland around those freeways. I'm like, wow, what a boring flat state Ohio is. And then I moved here and started looking around, and like I discovered, oh gosh, what is that park called? It's early in the morning for me. There's an enormous park just south of Columbus, like an hour south, that it was like used as the setting for Jeff Smith's Bone. Yeah, I can't remember right now. It'll come to me in a few minutes. Anyway, but yeah, there's just all, and like not far from where I live is like I could ride my bike to it. There's a waterfall. Like what? I did not know this. How could I have been so close-minded and myopic? Okay. Time. I'm going to try to do one of these big rocks. Wet it down first. And I've only got like 10 minutes. Oh yeah, yeah. The Appalachian Mountains, the Appalachian Trail. I don't remember if it isn't. Doesn't Appalachian Mountains are like they connect to Ohio, right? I haven't been here that long yet. I don't know everything about Ohio yet. I'm learning as fast as I can. I think like it's southeast Ohio. All right. Brown, I choose you. Lots of brown. And orange. Oklahoma is another one of those states that I drove through when I was moving to Phoenix. When I lived in Phoenix for what 4.5, 5 years, and yeah, I do remember that. Like this is a very flat state, but I don't know. I didn't like go digging around and looking in like the off the freeway parts. Someday I might do one of those Route 66 type deals. When we can move about again. Okay. Thank you for that clarification, Tom. Yeah, I haven't. So, like, I moved here and I was here for about. No, it was a year. We were celebrating our first year in Ohio when the pandemic started. So, I had begun to check out the rest of the state. You know, went to Wapakoneta for the 50th anniversary of the moon landing parade in Neil Armstrong's hometown. That was super fun. Went to Cincinnati and Cleveland a couple times. But like I said, like, you know, then all of a sudden we couldn't move about anymore. What's the other town that I went to? Worcester. It was a cool city. Went there for the Buckeye Book Fair. Okay, lots of brown in here. A little bit more orange. All right. The most, I would say, probably the most difficult drive I've ever had nothing to do with the state I was in exactly, but it was what led up to the drive was this goes back like 20 years. My wife and I were for our honeymoon. We went to Big Sur, camped, and went on a long hike. Came back to the campsite, and I left a box of Ritz peanut butter sandwich crackers in our tent. And the tent was moving. And I opened the tent and it was full of squirrels. There were just dozens of them in there, jumping around, tearing the place apart. And it was like we had just done like a 5-mile hike or something like that. And it was like late in the afternoon, and it was our last day there. And I was like, there's no way I'm sleeping in this tent tonight. So we packed the car. We were driving back from Big Sur to Phoenix, Arizona, which was what? I don't remember how long that drive was. It was long. It was a long drive. It was all night and into the next day, and I hadn't slept. And so we were crossing inland California, like where it gets all deserty again. And I'm noticing that I'm down to like a quarter tank of gas, And I'm like, oh my gosh. And there's nothing. There's nothing but trees. And I'm like, what's going to happen? Like, this is a nightmarish vacation. But it was my fault. Well, Tom, that's what you're talking about there is like kind of something that's been like a quiet dream of mine and my wife's. Like we really dig like those Route 66 type tours. Like when we watch documentaries about like all the out of the way places and the weirdness that used to be along the route. Yeah, at least it wasn't a bear. That's true. Maybe I could have moved the tent. Maybe I was also. It was a mess. I mean, it was sort of crumbs everywhere in that thing. There was no like. It was going to be several hours of cleaning it out, and like I said, it was our last night there anyway. So I was just like, nope, I'm just leaving. Oh, thanks, Joseph. Yeah, I got caught up in storytelling instead of thinking about what I'm doing here. And it's funny that like when we were first married, and even before we were married, like my wife and I just loved camping. We did it all the time, and like we would like go up to Paradise, Michigan. What are the falls up there? Dequamanon Falls. We'd stay for like a week or more. And And then we did, the last time we camped was probably, I want to say, like 5 or 6 years ago. And something changed. I don't know if it's like a function of getting older, or a part of getting older, or what. But all I could think of all night long when we were in that tent was bears, 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 bears. Like it was just like constantly running through my head. And then when we go on the hiking trails, and I would ask like the wilderness experts, people from the Department of Natural Resources, I'm like, okay, which is the bear I'm supposed to get big in front of? Which is the one I'm supposed to play dead? And then they would say like, oh, you'll be lucky if you find a bear on this trail. I'm like, I wouldn't phrase it that way. I got like way more fearful about that kind of stuff. I also think it's funny that I'm so fascinated by drawing bears, yet I'm so terrified of them. Maybe that's something my psyche's working out, right? Maybe that's what the whole drawing cute bears for the last 10 years. Really about me processing something. There's that too, Tom. Yes, is I did notice that it is not as fun sleeping on the ground as it was when I was 22. All right, let's get a little bit more purple in that shadow underneath. How are we doing on time? I am coming up on time. I'm kind of digging how this rock is looking. A little bit more purple and a little bit of indigo. I should be careful, and I should probably start to paint some of these roots because I'm putting down so much paint here that if I get it wet around it, it's going to lift up that paint again. I learned the hard way over here. Well, only in my dreams, Joseph. Oh my gosh. I was rewatching the Chronicles of Narnia. Which one was it? Prince Caspian. And I forgot about that whole scene where the really, what is it, the Telmarian overlord character is getting ready to have a showdown with Peter, like a sword fight. And there's a bear standing in the periphery. And like as they're like trading blows, they cut to the bear and he's going like, oh, this big grizzly bear getting all scared on Peter's behalf. Cutest thing I've ever seen in my life. Like that is like, if you ever want to like make me an easy sell on anything, do that. Okay, so here's the process, rather like what am I trying to say? Progress. Here's what I did digitally in Clip Studio Paint, and here's how far it's coming along on analog. I feel like the colors are a little brighter. Feels like the colors are brighter to me, huh? I wonder why that is. So I'm gonna call time on this live stream because I actually got to get ready to move on to other tasks. Today at noon, a Lean Into Art episode is dropping, and it is a pre-recorded mini workshop episode with more Clip Studio Paint tips. It's going to be all about the paneling tools and the cool things you can do with how you can auto make panels in Clip Studio Paint. That's going to be at leanintoart.com, patreon.com/leanintoart. And I will be back to live stream on Monday. What is Monday? Let's find out what Monday is. I think Monday is March. Yeah, Monday, March 1st. I'm going to be here at 10 a.m. Doing more live drawing, probably finishing this painting. So thanks, everybody, for hanging out with me and chatting with me while I'm working. And until next time, Jerzy Drozd, all those links above me. And if you're watching this and you had a good time, please consider hitting like on it. I understand that helps more people find these videos. So I won't lie. I'm trying to build an audience around this stuff so that when I do some projects later on in this year, I can, have an audience who's enthusiastic for my work to tell about them. So until next week, Jerzy Drozd, jdrozd.com, rss.jdrozd.com to see everything I make. Okay, bye.